Hi, Jovi. It's me, Teacher Craig. I'm sorry I can't see you today, but I can still read a story with you. Do you want to see? Look. My story is called City of Stories. Look at the city. There once was a little girl who lived in one of the biggest and busiest cities in the world. Here she is. She really loved stories, but everyone she knew was too busy to tell her stories. Her mother said, "I have to finish my work." Her father said, "I am reading the newspaper." Her brother said, "Can't you see I'm playing cricket?" Her neighbor said, "I have to go to the market to buy things." Does anyone want to read with her? No. Even her teacher said, "First, let us do the sums." Everyone was very busy. Many people were always tired and irritated and certainly had no time at all for stories. One day, Dee Dee came to the little girl's school. Dee Dee was not a teacher and she was not a student. She was older than the children and she was younger than the teachers. She had warm eyes and a soft smile. She was a friend of the children, and she was a friend of the teachers. The little girl wondered if Dee Dee knew any stories. She went up to Dee Dee shyly. Do you have a few minutes? Can you tell me a story?" Dee Dee looked at the little girl with serious eyes. "Of course," she said. "I can tell you a story. What kind of story would you like?" The little girl's eyes grew big with anticipation. "Can you tell me a story about a lion?" Dee Dee sat down with the girl in the school and told the story about a little lion who was lost in the jungle. The little girl listened very closely. Dee Dee's story was so vivid that she could feel the wind in the trees. She could feel the swaying sounds of the grass, and she could almost feel the velvety fur of the lion cub. The little girl's friends who were playing nearby came to see what Dee Dee was saying. Soon, they were absorbed in the story, too. Before long, the little girl's entire class was around them, listening and imagining, wanting more stories. The little girl and her friends soon found out Dee Dee knew lots and lots of stories. She knew stories about monkeys and birds, about dogs and mean cats, about fish in blue rivers and deep oceans, about high mountains and green valleys, about children in cities and children in villages, adventures and mysteries, about handsome kings and lovely queens, about what to do when you are scared and what to do when you are sad, about finding lost treasures and knowing wonderful secrets, and much, much more. Look. Wow, what is this? Dee Dee's stories are so colorful. Her stories are so good. Every day, the little girl and her friends sat with Dee Dee. Children from other classes came. Teachers of the school came. Children from neighboring schools came. Children who were not in school came. Even children who were too young to go to school came. Some sat and listened. Some stood and listened. Some children lay down on their tummies, like this one. As they listened, they learned how to tell stories to each other. They learned how to build stories, how to spin stories, how to weave stories and cook stories, and how to fly stories like big kites in the blue sky. They all learned how to tell them so that listeners would not blink or move and would remain mesmerized till the story ended. They're good at telling stories now. Slowly, through Dee Dee and the little girl, word began to spread through the city. People began to tell stories, and people began to listen. Mothers stopped work. Fathers put away newspapers, and teachers put aside their textbooks. Neighbors did not go shopping. They began to tell stories. The big brothers stopped playing cricket. The little sisters stopped skipping rope. They began to listen to stories. Everyone is listening to stories or telling stories. They're not doing their jobs. The food market stopped selling food. The clothing stores stopped selling clothes. Everyone started listening to each other's stories. The bus driver left his bus and came to listen. They were in such a hurry to tell their stories. Trains did not run in the city because the drivers were too busy with stories. Newspapers were not printed. Buildings could not be built. No restaurants served food. No fishermen went to fish. No one was willing to do anything but tell stories and listen to stories. Uh-oh. Is that okay? No. If there's no bus driver, who will drive the bus? If no one's catching fish, what will we eat for dinner? Everyone is too busy telling stories. The mailman stopped delivering mail because they were too busy with stories. The policeman sat in the middle of a busy intersection telling stories to all the drivers around him. All the TVs in the city were switched off because people were listening to stories. Look at the people in the cars. They're just listening to his story. But this is the king. The king is worried. The city came to a stop. The mayor was worried. The king was worried. What is to be done now? He said. No one is working, and nothing is happening in the city. All of his friends thought about what to do. What can we do about this? No one is working. No one is doing their job. Everyone is just telling stories. What can we do? They tried to make a plan, but nothing worked. No one listened. Finally, Dee Dee and the little girl were summoned to the mayor's mansion. The little girl looked very small in the big room. She held on to Dee Dee's hand tightly. Hold hands. Dee Dee was also small, surrounded by fat men and tall men and women of the council. No one smiled. Everyone looked at them with frowns. Are they happy? Is the king happy? No. They're angry. Why? Dee Dee and the girl told too many stories. Now everyone is telling stories, and it's your fault. It's your fault. Are they bad guys? No, Dee Dee and the girl are good guys. They're good. They just want to tell stories. These stories have brought our city to a stop. What do we do about this? Asked the king in his loud voice. There was complete silence in the room. The little girl grabbed Dee Dee's hand even more tightly. Dee Dee looked straight at the mayor. Her voice was not loud, but it was very clear. Let there be one story every morning and one story every evening, she said. That way, everyone will have stories, but they can also go back to doing what they have to do. They can go back to doing their jobs. Excellent idea, roared the mayor. Everyone clapped. The fat and tall men and women began to smile. The little girl loosened her hands on Dee Dee's fingers. Hooray! That's our plan. So from now on, people reads one story in the morning and one story in the evening. So they get 2 stories a day. And they can still do their jobs. They can still go to work. From that day on, the city heaved a sigh of relief. In the big city, one story is told in the morning and another one right before bed at night. From that day on, the little girl and Dee Dee's big, busy city is called the City of Stories.